Hello again and welcome to another episode of CodeTechCentral Learn C++ ASAP. At this point, you should have your IDE installed. Last episode, we installed code blocks and we tested it, and hopefully yours is working. And we should be all set and ready to go. On to lesson one. Okay, so at this point, you should already know how to create a new project. To create a file, you basically click Create a new project here from your Start Here menu. You select Files, select C++, you hit Go, Next, make sure you have C++ selected, hit Next, you navigate to where you want to store the file. You could create a new folder, you give the file a name. I'm calling my file lesson 1. You can do the same or you can name it, whatever you desire. You hit finish and you're good to go. I already did this process, so I'm just going to hit cancel. Uh, Here is the file that I created earlier, and I basically just added a few lines of code to the original file, which we did in the last lesson, getting started. I added a line here, added another line here. This was already there. We have our main function, and I'm going to explain what most of this stuff is as we go along. I added a line here, another line here, and I changed a couple of stuff. So you could go ahead and copy what I have here, or you can download the source code from the link which I have provided for you and just paste it into this new file that you've created. Okay, so let's get started. So the first things I want to discuss are preprocessor directives, and that's what we have here. Include whatever you see this hashtag followed by these keywords. These are called preprocessor directive. These things are processed before our compiler begins to compile our code. Here we have an include statement, and we just include IO stream, and we're going to discuss that a little bit more later on. And here's a define statement where we defined a variable and we actually initialized it, and you're going to see that in the code. We actually use these lines in the code, which we're going to discuss. And comments. Comments are extremely important in C++. You got to use comments so you can remember what you did or what you were trying to do, or so others can understand your code. We're also going to discuss keywords and variables. Keywords are basically words that are either predefined or words that are reserved. The ones that are predefined, they already are associated with some blocks of code. The reserved ones, you cannot use those because those are reserved for whatever purposes they serve. And we're going to talk about variables and some rules that goes into naming variables. Now, variables are just that. We store information inside variables, and the information can vary, meaning we can change the information. The variables in C++, they have a predefined amount of space allocated depending on the type of variable. For instance, I have some listed here. You have a character which can hold a byte. We have integers. It's system dependent. It's either 2 to 4 bytes depending on your system, of course. We have floats, which are basically decimal numbers with decimal points. Doubles, and you should search online for some more information into the various types of variables and the predefined space, because that's important later on when you go code, and you can get errors if you try to fit something that's, if you try to fit a float into a byte, you want to know what will happen. Something might get cut off, or you might end up with unexpected results. So it's important to know the size of the variables. We're also going to talk about some escape sequence codes. You're going to see it in the code that we're going to be playing around with for this session. Here's a list of some escape sequence codes and the results that they produce. I encourage you to go online and find a more complete list and know more about this. You'll encounter it using the C++ code on a regular basis. Okay, so let's start at the top up here and go through this quickly. This is a comment. Whoa, that doesn't look right. Okay, so this is a comment. These two slash marks here tells the compiler to ignore this line. So it doesn't compile this once you put these slash marks in. There's another way to do a comment on multiple lines as I showed you in the slide earlier. Let's move on to this thing right here. This is an include statement. Now, a lot of the stuff that we use down here, such as cout and cin and these shift operators, the compiler has to know what those represent. So there's a block of code hidden somewhere that we have to tell the compiler, hey, look here for what these things will mean. And the best way how you can understand how this works is for your homework. What you can do is put comments around some of this stuff here and try to compile and run the code and see what happens. Here, same thing. Comment this out and see what happens. The computer will not recognize some of these keywords that we've put in here if you get rid of this stuff. So this is actually using namespace STD, and no, the STD does not stand for sexually transmitted diseases. Now STD stands for the standard library. So using namespace STD is telling the compiler to use a whole group of libraries and to look there for the meaning or the definition of some of these keywords that we'll use. And a part of C++ is actually learning how to create your own functions and classes. Basically, you can create your own words and the definitions that will be behind them that will tell the compiler what to do when they encounter those keywords. The best way to learn this, as I said, is to go ahead and one by one comment out some of these things and see what happens. Um, for instance, if you didn't have this std here, every time you use cout, you would have to do something like this for it to work properly. Every time you do cin, you would have to do this for it to work properly. We're going to go into more detail about what all of this is. But using using the namespace std is just a convenient way so you don't have to do that type of stuff every single time that you type cout or cin. Now let's go more into detail about what cout is. Cout, this is a left shift operator. Just think of this as you're saying you want this thing here on the right, see, to go this way, and cout basically prints it to your screen. As you can see here, it says all stream std, these two colons, cout. That's giving you an idea of what's going on here. Cin, same thing. Now, when you type something in from your keyboard, the iStream std, this double colon here, cin is going into this variable that we have created called username, and we did that here on this line. We created a variable, it's a string called username, and we're storing information that we enter via the keyboard into that string. And here, cout again, we are, this is an end line. This is telling the compiler to go down to a new line, or this information would just appear on the same line. So you can go ahead and put comments around this to see if you want to comment around something. As I mentioned You can do something like this, and that will just comment around this code that this is this whatever is between these two characters is commented or ignored by the compiler. So you can try that and see. This is a nice, interesting one. This produces a bell. And these things are our escape sequence operators. There's a bunch of these. You can go online and find out about some of them. These are the more common ones. This one here is telling the compiler we need a new line here. So go ahead. We're going to go ahead and run this code right now to see what happens. First, you compile it. I've already compiled it and I know there shouldn't be any errors. You see that there's 0 errors, there's no warnings, everything works out fine. We're gonna run it and see what the results are. It says enter my name, and I'm not sure if that sound came through on the tutorial, but you should have heard that bell. It says hello Henry. Pretty good. You try that, play around with this, and see what happens. And we're going to go on to the next lesson as soon as you're done doing that. Thanks.